Welcome! This is what is happening on the Sun today, the 31st of August 2011. The Sun seems to have got a very bad case of measles, as there are spots breaking out all over the place. We'll take a look at that in a minute. First, I would like to say thank you for all your good wishes while we were off the air. Unfortunately, after Irene, we had a power outage. Our generator failed to work, and our internet provider, bless him, failed to come up for 3 days. So I've been unable to get onto the internet or produce the videos that I normally do. Anyway, thank you for your patience, and we hopefully are back on the air permanently now. But first, our trivia question. 20 years ago this day, a satellite was launched to look at the Sun. It produced this iconic picture of the evolution of the Sun over a full solar cycle in soft X-rays. What was the name of that satellite, and what countries provided instruments for that satellite? The answer will be given at the end. If the Sun is suddenly producing a lot of sunspots, you'd expect it to be producing a lot of flares, and indeed that's the case. Over the last 48 hours it's produced 8 C flares of varying sizes from small to medium, but no major activity. The X-ray background has eased up to the B3 level, and looks as though it's continuing to rise. Phillytech suggested that I ring the active regions and then number them separately so it's less confusing, and so I've tried that today, and let me know whether you think this is preferable to the usual way that I do it. So anyway, here we have all the regions that are on the disk. There are 10 spotted regions that I can see, 7 of which are numbered. So let's take a look at each of them in detail in turn and see what's going on there. We'll start in the northwest limb where region 1274 is. 1274 is the region nearest the limb. It looks relatively simple, but be warned, because of foreshortening, the spots will look a lot smaller and many of the smaller spots will disappear. You can see 2 of the unnumbered regions to the east of this region, one to the north and one to the south. The one to the south looks a much more interesting group, and we should keep an eye on both of these and see if they grow over the next few days. Next, let's take a look at the very impressive complex near disk center, regions 1277, 1279 and 1282. 1277 and 1279 are large unipolar spots that haven't changed very much over the last week, so I still don't expect very much activity from them. However, region 1282 to the north seems to have grown significantly over the last 3 days, and so this is a promising area for future activity. If you look carefully just down to the south and west of the 1277 spot, there's a couple of faint spots coming up. That may be a new region developing, in which case it could reinvigorate regions 1277 and or 1279. Next we travel to the northeast limb to look at region 1283. It has only just come on the disk, and because of foreshortening we can't tell a lot about its structure as yet, but give it a couple of days and we should be able to see a lot more of the region. However, it does look rather promising at the moment. Region 1281 is near the southeast limb. It's a modest sized region that might produce the odd C flare, but unless it grows it's not going to be a major source of activity. Last but not least is region 1284 near the southwest limb. This is another one of the new regions that have cropped up in the last 24 hours, and it looks quite promising. However, it's close to the west limb, so will only be with us for a couple of days. So all in all, over the last 2 days the solar activity has been relatively quiet with just a few C flares. So now let's take a look at the evolution of these regions using the HMI data from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. First the sunspot movie and then the magnetic movie. In contrast to what we were doing a few days ago, let's take a look at regions that are growing. We've had 6 new regions appear in the last 24 hours, 3 numbered and 3 unnumbered. See if you can identify them in both movies, and see how rapidly they evolve, which gives you some indication of their likelihood of flaring. In the transition region movie we can see there's a large number of surges coming out of the region near the northwest limb. However, for future activity it might be worth keeping an eye on the prominence near the southeast limb, which looks to be very dynamic and ready to lift off. Here is a detailed frame I've captured from the movie showing one of the surges from the northwest limb. See how many surges like that you can count from that region. However, these are unlikely to be big enough to produce a major CME. In the low temperature coronal movie I'd like you to take a look at the region coming over the northeast limb, region 1283. Compare it in brightness and dynamics with the other regions that are around at this time. Is this more or less likely to be flaring than the other ones? In the high temperature coronal image from the GOES SXI instrument you can see there are no major coronal holes that will be affecting us over the next few days, but there is possibly another region coming over the southeast limb, and we'll have to wait for a day or two to see how bright and effective that region is going to be. From a coronal mass ejection point of view, the Sun has been relatively quiet for the last couple of days. Here I'm going to show you 4 days worth of coronal mass ejection data, because of course I've been off the air for most of that time, starting with those 2 beautiful coronal mass ejections that we saw just on the 28th. First, the small field of view C2 instrument, followed by the larger field of view C3 instrument. And you can see that we've had no major coronal mass ejections since those 2 on the 28th, which is quite unusual for this time of the cycle. Looking at the solar wind data from the ACE spacecraft, we see that the density of the solar wind has remained relatively constant but quite low. The temperature has been steadily falling, as has the velocity, so we expect the geospace conditions to be relatively quiet as a result. The high energy electron flux is slowly recovering to more normal levels, and even with a slight increase in activity we've had no significant proton events. The auroral zone looks mildly active, and the KP index has been varying only between 0 and 2, which is very quiet. So in summary then, the X-ray background is at the B3 level, the sunspot number is at 89, radio sun intensity is at 101 solar flux units, solar wind speed has fallen to 370 km per second with a density of less than 1 proton per cubic centimetre, and geospace conditions are rated as very quiet. And my forecast for the next 24 hours is that C flares are possible, M flares are unlikely, and X flares are very unlikely. The sunspot number should go higher, coronal mass ejections are still possible, solar wind speed should remain low, and the chances of getting a major geomagnetic storm is very unlikely. In the composite coronal image you can see that there is indeed a region due to come over the southeast limb, possibly 2 of them, in the next few days. Otherwise things are going to remain relatively quiet for about 5 or 6 days before we get our next major region in the north. The answer to our trivia question is that the satellite Yoko was launched from Kagoshima on the 31st of August 1991. It got beautiful images of the Sun in soft X-rays and hard X-rays, and also some soft X-ray spectra. The instruments were provided by mainly the Japanese. However, the US and the UK made major contributions to the instrument pack. In fact, I spent several tours of duty living in Japan helping to operate the instrument in the early 90s, which was a tremendous amount of fun. Anyway, that's it for today. Keep safe. Bye for now.